Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with an article from PJ Media dated August 18th, and it says, "Stop and Smell the Commie, the Normie's Guide to Recognizing Marxism Before It Kills Us All." Which seems like not a lot of people are doing, and I have a feeling, and I haven't read this article yet, but I have a feeling it comes on the heels of a certain New York City mayoral election coming up. So let's go ahead and get into it. It says, "The Trump economy continues to improve and crime is falling. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin met to begin the process of winding down the war between Russia and Ukraine. Trump has also begun turning Washington back into a peaceful city where residents can walk to the Dairy Queen without fear of stray lead perforation." And then the author of this article is Kevin Downey, as you saw above. He likes to put in these little factorama things here. So the first one says, "Washington, D.C. is so violent as how violent is it? Abe Pullen, the manager of the Washington Bullets basketball team," this is like 30 years ago that this happened, "changed the team's name to the Wizards. I guess it was easier than arresting the gun-toting yabos who were perforating people for decades." Yeah, I remember when that was going on. That, yes, for people that didn't know, if you're younger than like 30 and just haven't been paying attention to the NBA at all, the Washington Wizards basketball team used to be called the Washington Bullets, and I think Dan Patrick on ESPN used to call them the Boulets or something like that. And I do remember whoever it was. It might not have been Dan Patrick. So yeah, just to give you an idea that he wanted to change the name of the team because he's like, it associates with violence and our city is violent, and we should change the name of it. So it says, "The entire nation should be, like me, enjoying a daytime cocktail, a Manhattan with orange bitters, risque. It says, and enjoying life. We? Not quite." It says, "Sure, your typical flag-waving, liberty-loving Americans are having a hoot, but the more successful Trump and America become, the louder those meat-dodging, septum-pierced, blue-haired apparatchiks seem to screech. Why is that? Because they are filthy communist prags who want to bring down the greatest nation in the history of mankind, which happens to be the United States of America. It says, you are probably already doing what you can to preserve our republic, but we are going to need more of our normie neighbors and family to join our crusade. But many of them wouldn't know a Marxist if they them put on a drag show for their 5-year-old. That's where I come in." And here's a plug for his show. It says, "Only you can prevent socialism." Thank you very much. It says, "I am writing this article so we can get our politically sleepy friends into the biffo that I firmly believe will decide whether or not our kids will spend their future weekends enjoying barbecued steaks or state-sanctioned cricket loaf." Not cutting that cough out. The first thing to know is this: communists and Islam hate Western civilization. The two have combined to establish a one-government, new world order. A major part of this plan involves gouging billions of invaders into the West. If you think I'm being a tinfoil wackadoodle, check out what the World Economic Forum, or WEF, predicts for 2030. It says, so 8 predictions for the world in 2030. Number 1 was "you'll own nothing and you'll be happy," which is the one that keeps getting all the rounds. It says, "The U.S. won't be the world's leading superpower." It says, "You'll eat much less meat," and "Western values have been tested to the breaking point." Well, you guys definitely weren't helping. And by the way, they're a communist organization, and they suck, and you can give them the middle finger every chance you get. So the commies' weapons of choice are, number 1 here, and I'm going to see the little wiki note on the video because it is climate change. It says, anything the globalists want to get rid of will be deemed bad for the climate. The prairie fairies are now declare that cows barking spiders, cow farts, that are bad for the clouds. In truth, they want us to consume less protein. Weak people fight less. They will use the myth of climate change to take our cars to keep us in one place and thus easier to watch. You can see that kind of also with like the 15-minute cities concept. That's what they want to do, is to take away your cars. It says racism and bigotry is the next bullet point here. It says the communists will screech racism for any institution they want to discard, like voter ID. So they also use the threat of being called a racist to keep people from complaining about the current rape epidemic in Europe, pointing out the onslaught of sexual assaults, and who is committing them, has been deemed offensive. Discussing the wildly out of proportion of black on white crime in the U.S. is also verboten. Next bullet point says the commies demonize their political adversaries like Donald Trump and MAGA as racist to paint them as the enemy of polite society. If you oppose a man in a wig shaking his waxed and thonged bahuki in your kid's face, you're homophobic. If you don't approve of Muslims raping Westerners, you're Islamophobic. You can lose your job if you speak out. If you oppose your kid's new pronounces, I'm thinking means to say pronouns, you're homophobic, and yes, the liberals will take your children away from you. Let me see what this link is for. Probably something in California. Yeah, I think I remember seeing that article, and I think, yeah, it is in California. Then this last bullet point here says QBZ 95. I don't know what that is. It says these will be used against us in the final battle for freedom. What is QBZ 95? What weapon? Oh, it's a Chinese army weapon. Oh, that's fun. So scrolling down here, it says Factorama. This is Factorama number 2. It says Marxists use various excuses for their behavior, but always remember the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution, and that is a very important thing to keep in mind. And it says, please click that link for a full understanding of what we're up against. And what does it actually link to? I'm not going to do it. Oh, yeah. Okay. You can go click on that. The article is linked in the description, as all of the articles are that I read. Next section here says, Identifying Marxists 101. The first reason to suspect someone may be a grimy Mau Mau is their appearance. And you can see what's coming up below here is these Antifa arrestees. It says the usual characteristics include, but are not limited to, clownish hair, unsightly tattoos, armpit hairs as females only, and birth control level ugliness. Damn, okay. It says, one can usually find these animals throwing rocks at cops and federal officers. That said, Marxists are sometimes adored in a more traditional tonsorial manner. And there's Adam Schiff and Letitia James. And yeah, they got some problems of their own that they got to figure out here. But anyway, it says Identifying Marxism 101. It says, the best indication that an idea or measure came from a communist is that it is extremely stupid or morally repugnant. Here are 3 Marxist beliefs that no rational human would believe, and the asterisk goes down to here. We'll skip down to that before we go back to what those 3 beliefs are. It says, communists aren't human. They are vile, anti-human animals who want to enslave the human race into a one-world government. They also want to reduce the population to 500 million people worldwide. More on that later. And yeah, that's killing, what is that, like 90% of the population of the planet? Something to that effect. It's a lot of people. So here's the 3 Marxist beliefs that no rational human will believe. That cow flatulence will end humanity, teachers should discuss gender with their students, or women have penises. So it's important to remember that there are 2 types of communists. You have your high-ranking communists who know Marxism is garbage but simply want to rule the world. Then you have your insane, street-level pinko-stinkos who actually believe men can give birth, climate change is real, and pedophiles are people too. Says these things may look like freak shows, like the freak shows I posted above, or perhaps the crusty old hippies who protested Tesla when they were too old to do so but seem to have mysteriously stopped. I guess Elon is no longer a Nazi. He never was. Okay. There's the Marxist in your midst, maybe your annoying sister-in-law who put one of those hilarious "in the house we believe" signs on her lawn to show the world how unimpeachably moral she thinks she is. And there's actually one of those by my parents' house. That somebody had that, and like I scoff at that every time I see it. It's pretty bad. And my parents' next door neighbor flies the pride flag too. So that's what we have here in Illinois. Says I believe I am a good person, yet I don't need a sign to bat signal my virtue to my neighbors. Yeah, you don't need to. That's all it is just a virtue signal. Those signs and the flags and everything. Says Identifying Marxism 201. So we're going on to the next class. Says now that we know what the fellow travelers look like and think, let's take this lesson to the next level. And toenail clippers for seniors is not what I was expecting, but I'm kidding. I'm just reading that ad. Excuse me. It says, meet Yuri Bezmenov, and if you don't know who he is, here's going to tell you, and he's a very important person. It says, he's a Soviet defector who, in 1984, ironic, told us the Ruskies plan to topple the United States from within. It says, this video may be the most important 6 minutes and 50 seconds you spend in your life. This is an excerpt from a longer video, which I recommend watching when you have the time. Actually, watch all of his videos if you want a PhD in fighting communism. And yes, you absolutely should, because he tells you exactly what the story is. And, well, we're about to get into it right now. It says, Bezmenov told us that the Russians had a 4-point plan to tear down our nation. First is demoralize. To convince Americans that our country sucks. This is why our sister-in-law thinks our nation sucks, but is built on racism and white supremacy, and needs to be destroyed and rebuilt from the bottom. Number 2 here is destabilize. Says the best way to destabilize a nation is with rampant crime. This is why our nation's big blue toilet towns are dangerous. Shoplifting up to $950 is fine. Democrats have run these cities for decades, if not a full century. Throw in some Democrat-sponsored riots to speed up the process. Add a struggling economy, thank you Joe Biden, and voila, you have the makings of a truly Marxist revolt on your hands. This is the stage where we are now in Bezmenov's plan. A rape pandemic, like we are seeing in Western Europe, will come to the U.S. during this phase, and liberal politicians will turn a blind eye. For a peek at the future of this phase, read these articles. And it says, First is Elon Musk calls for long overdue national inquiry in UK on rape gang scandal. If you don't know anything about that, it is harrowing, to say the least. And the other article here says, can we talk about this Islamic invasion problem before more Westerners get raped and killed? That is also a severe problem out in Europe. So we're going to skip over Kevin Downey's embedded tweet here to the next thing, which is crisis. So this is step 3. It says, this crisis era is the violent, weeks-long stage where there will likely be an armed struggle in the streets. And thank the Founding Fathers for the Second Amendment. Yes, yes, and yes. And finally is normalcy. It says, this is when the crisis battles are over and the communists establish their new normal. MAGA types will be hauled off to the gulags, free speech will be a ghost, and the Islamo-communists will establish Sharia law. So we're on to the next course here. This is Identifying Marxism 301. So we're getting to the the end stage classes here. It says, in order to truly recognize the omnipotent Marxism that has insidiously invaded every institution in America, it's important to have an understanding of the 45 goals of communism for the United States as entered into the congressional record in 1963. It says, Pinko-Rama. Hitler wrote Mein Kampf, a book that detailed his plans to conquer the world and eradicate Jewry, and no one did a thing. Yeah, and you can see that that's coming home to roost right now. It says, if you keep these goals in mind, every Marxist onslaught will make sense. Some of them are antiquated. Let's go through some of the rest of the goals. So again, we're not talking about Mein Kampf, we're talking about the 45 goals of communism for the United States here. So it says number 15 was capture one or both of the political parties in the United States, and I think we know which one's been captured. It says the Marxists have clearly snagged the Democratic Party and a few Republicans too. This is looking at you, Mitch McConnell. Yeah, go look up who his wife is. It says 16, it was use technical decisions of the courts to weaken basic American institutions by claiming their activities violate civil rights. It says, have you seen how many Marxist judges have thrown roadblocks in front of Trump since he won back the White House? Yes, a lot of them. 17 says, get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. Get control of teachers' associations, or I guess we'd say teachers' unions. Now this is 60 years later. Just put the party line in textbooks. So this is why and how teachers are discussing gender with 7-year-olds, why they are teaching kids that socialism rocks, it does not, and why they are pushing them to pledge allegiance to the pride flag. And that is what you see here in this Chad Prather embedded tweet. It says number 19 says, use student riots to foment public protests against programs or organizations which are under communist attack. You mean like at Columbia University, Yale, Harvard, and elsewhere? It says 20, infiltrate the press. Get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, and policy-making positions. The CNN, NBC, ABC, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post, etc., all hashtags there. 21, gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. So I stopped watching Superstore when they started pushing COVID codswallop, and I turned off The Boys when they went after Trump. It says check these out too, including The Handmaid's Tale. It says what better way to brainwash America than going after our TV shows? Yeah, and I finished watching Superstore, but yes, if you're going to watch it, it's 6 seasons. The first 3, or probably 3.5, are actually really, really good and really funny. It's kind of like an Office type show, but takes place in like a Walmart type place. But then it starts going woke, and the author of this article, Kevin Downey, is in fact right that it started pushing COVID stuff and started suddenly being like illegal immigration is good, and it was one of those shows that you're just kind of like, oh God, I might have to stop watching this, but I just kept through it and finished it. But overall, if you're okay with not just like record scratch moments of wokeness in a show, but you're like, if anything like that is sensitive to you, don't watch it. Maybe just the first 3 seasons, or just not at all. But if you don't care, then just go ahead and watch it. Because again, it was funny, and the episodes that are not political are very funny. And I haven't watched The Boys. I've read the comic book. The comic is fantastic. I will never watch the TV show because I've seen what the showrunner has done to it, which it seems like has just destroyed it. Anyway, it says 22. It says continue discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic expression. An American communist cell was told to eliminate all good sculpture from parks and buildings, substitute shapeless, awkward, and meaningless forms. And it says Sydney Sweeney is a white supremacist. Let's embrace fat chicks. Yeah, there you go. It says tragic Factorama. It says as a traveling comedian, I may have embraced a salad dodger or 3 in my life. Yeah, Kevin Downey, by the way, I think he's a stand-up comedian too. So it says 24, break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV. It says this is why the libs are fighting tooth and nail to keep dirty books in school libraries. It says 26 is present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, and healthy. What began as a campaign to allow gay folks to get married, which passed in 2015, has in 10 years become "we want men in the ladies' room." It says you better cut off your son's penis if he says so, and if you don't have sex with a transamobob, you're transphobic. And then some related articles here as well. Number 27, though, it says infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with their social religion. Discredit the Bible and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need a religious crutch. It says Christianity is the enemy of communism and Islam. So the left has been demonizing Christians for years, as Islam rapes its way across Western Europe and slaughters its way throughout Africa. It's coming here. Don't be naive. 28 says eliminate prayer or any phase of religious expression in the schools on the grounds that it violates the principle of separation of church and state. And so see my response to number 27, which we just read. 29 says discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, out of step with modern needs, a hindrance to cooperation between nations on a worldwide basis. As you will now see a harmful language alert on the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights. 30, it says discredit the American Founding Fathers. Present them as selfish aristocrats who had no concern for the common man, which is beyond false. It says the communists have long been saying that our founding fathers, who risked everything to create a free nation, were racist, and thus we should burn down the nation or something stupid like that. 35 says discredit and eventually dismantle the FBI, and he wrote here, I agree. Yeah, there you go. And at this point, yes, that's probably a thing that should be under consideration. 37 says, it says infiltrate and gain control of big business. Between 200 and 300 companies donated more than $90 million to the Marxist organization called Black Lives Matter. Many more invited DEI officers into their businesses to make sure woke took over. The 40 says discredit the family as an institution. Encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. As I mentioned that Christianity is a firewall against communism, so is the nuclear family. Communists draft malcontents into their legions. A happy home life stands in the way, which leads us to number 41, says emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents. Attribute prejudices, mental blocks, and retarding of children to the suppressive influence of parents. It says there is no better way to brainwash kids than to get them away from their parents. This is why schools are helping your girls get abortions and push young people to become a transamobob. You may also recall the link above where I pointed out the authorities will take your kids if you don't use your confused kids' pronouns. And then 44 says internationalize the Panama Canal. It says thank you, Jimmy Carter. Was that really one of the things? Was the Panama freaking Canal? Anyway, it says, what have we learned? It says, we now know how to identify some Marxists by their toxic coloring and abhorrent facial piercings. Others dress like your harpy-in-law. Many Marxists are teachers, journalists, and Democrats. We understand how they use climate change and the threat of being called a bigot to control and even cancel people. We know they are on phase 2 of their 4-phase plan to take over America. We have listened to Yuri Bezmenov and discussed some of the 45 goals of communism to take over America. It says continuous learning is essential. He shills his program, and then some humor down here, and that is basically it. So there you go. There's your recognizing communism before it kills us all. So, bam, there you go. What do you think about this? Let me know in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.